Welcome to the Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. This show is about the spiritual journey and all of the challenges, healing, wisdom, and consciousness expansion experienced along the way.
Welcome to another edition of Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. Welcome, Jenn.
Hey, Jim, how's it going?
I, I feel like the ebbs and flows of life are continuing, right?
Yeah, but it definitely feels better than it has over the last few years to me. Even with all the upheaval and everything going on, there's still a lightness to it that I didn't feel a few years ago. So I'm feeling pretty good about things, even though it seems chaotic.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
good, because I wanted to keep this positive and sort of light because not everyone is feeling that. But
I know. Well, you
so
know, my, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're in the time of the ascension, and the energies are certainly working to help us bring up the things that we need to heal. And it's doing it very suddenly and very quickly for a lot of us. And my feeling of it is the less resistance you have and the more positive you can try to be throughout the process, which is not easy. And I've certainly not had times, where I'm always positive. But if you can stay more positive or shift out of the negative more quickly and have less resistance, you can flow through things more quickly and easily. And then, even when it does look chaotic and the upheaval is happening, it's not going to have a detrimental effect on you the way it would if you're seeing things from a very negative place. And so I love the idea of, trying to be positive, doing the best you can, really trying to look at all the different angles and how whatever you're going through might be helping you. But then also, sometimes we have fears that we need to face or things that we need to heal because so much of it's subconscious.
Yeah. Um, Fear and doubt for me are two things that I've worked on a lot. Um, as my therapist would say, it's your demon is doubt.
Yeah.
But it's important to know what you're working with, right? Because then you can do something about it. And that's, I think, sort of the awareness that you were talking about. When you think like, how can mindfulness help you? It's being aware of what's getting in the way. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are not aware of that, or not aware of the subconscious beliefs that are undermining them in their life.
Before you texted me and talked about what we were, some possible topics today, I was working on an article around you can change your life. And it's about having a more positive mindset and really working through your fears. And one of the things that I wrote in the article was, we tend to think about life in terms of what we don't want. So we might think, oh, I definitely don't want that disease, or I definitely don't want, this financial situation or whatever it is. But we don't tend to think in terms of what we do want. And so one of the best questions you can ask is, what is it you actually want?
I agree. That's like really hard for some people.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, we should probably just kind of unpack that a little bit, because that's something that I see a lot of people struggle with. And it's like, well, I don't know.
I do too sometimes. Well, usually I do know what I want, but because I think fear tends to creep up in some way or another, even in a way where I don't always notice it. There's a fear underlying certain things for me that I sometimes still find myself working through, or maybe different aspects of. And as I'm healing those, it's like the universe likes to bring you the opportunity to heal it quicker. So, in order to heal things, you have to face them. And so, I think that's a big part of the process. We have to not be in resistance to the things that are showing up, so that we can face those things and uncover what we're actually thinking underneath. And
But how do you get someone to tussle with, what do I want?
yeah, well, I think the first thing is to acknowledge what they are afraid of, because that's the foremost thought. And then I'll basically put that on the shelf for a minute and say, okay, we'll get to that. I just want you to leave that to the side for a minute. But then underneath of that, what is it that you do want? If you know what you don't want, what is the circumstance that you would like to show up? And if they can't define a specific thing, it might just be they want to feel safe, they want to feel loved, they want to feel secure, they want to feel XYZ. It's more of a state of feeling or being than a thing that they want. Um, so, underlying all the things that we say we want, we really just want to feel loved, safe, and secure.
Yeah, and as we're talking about this, I'm wondering if so many of us forget, and as we're talking, please know, as I talk about all these things, I am included in all of them.
Yes,
I am
most
not
people are.
immune from any of these things.
Yeah.
If anything that makes me, skilled in any way is that I've been through most things. So, um, we often are looking out, right, externally to maybe what our parents wanted us to be, or I mean, I'll admit this. I picked my college because someone I really respected, I heard them say, "Well, if I was picking, I'd go to this school." So I'm like, "Well, you're really smart, so if that's where you'd go, then I guess I should go there."
Yeah.
You know? It was not my decision per se, it was influenced on what I thought other people might think looked good.
Well, so that's the thing when because really what we're talking about is what are we manifesting,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of times that we just have no idea what will bring us the joy or the fulfillment or the belonging that we are looking for. And, you know, I think it was Mike Dooley. I had listened to a program of his years ago when I first stepped into my spiritual awakening.
Oh, yeah?
And actually it's funny, his program was called Thoughts Are Things, I think, or something like that.
Oh, that's where I totally riffed
Right.
that from, yeah.
And so it's funny. I'm going to bring him up and give him, his two thumbs up because it
He's a
really
good dude.
was a powerful program. And one of the things that he says is that it's not your job to determine how things are going to happen. It's just your job to pitch it to the universe. And then the universe is what hits it out of the ballpark. It's not your job to hit the ball once it's pitched. You just say what you want, the universe delivers. And one of the other things he says is he prefers to try to manifest from the highest state with the fewest, I forget how he words it, but like the details. So if you're thinking, okay, I want, to go to some college and, now I've got to think all the details and I got to go research everything. But instead, what he would probably say, at least in this program, is really come at it from the standpoint of what would bring me the most fulfillment? What would I feel best at? Where would I have the most joy? Where would I have the best chance for my further career? And you just pitch that to the universe. And with the end result being feeling fulfilled, loving life, feeling good, the details don't even really matter. And so you can try to manifest at the more detailed level, but he usually recommends, at least back then, going at that higher level. So,
So is that connecting with how you want to feel?
I mean, I generally, yeah, I think so. It is more emotionally based, but without telling the universe how to bring you that emotion. Um, but in that, so let's say someone's having maybe financial difficulties. Uh, Really, what they want to feel is to feel safe and secure. When you start having a fear of not enough, it's because you might get kicked out of your house. You're going to not have enough for food. You can't take care of your kids. It's that safety and security that's threatened. So instead of thinking about how you don't have enough, if you really focus and pitch to the universe that, you know what, I want to feel safe and secure. I want to feel financially free. So that's really ultimately what you want. The details then would be how is that going to come to you? So it could be through a job, it could be, a lump sum of money coming in somehow, or whatever the case may be, but there's stuff happening that you have no control over. And the more detailed we try to get about the manifestation, the more control we're trying to have over the process and the fewer doors that can open. So the goal is, from that program that he taught, was really you want to open as many doors as possible. You don't want to constrict any of the ways what you want can come in. And if you go at a high enough level, you're opening all the doors.
Yeah. One of the things, or one of the ways that I have seen that in my life was when I was working somewhere and I realized like this is very unfulfilling and I'm not ever going to be happy here.
Yeah.
I need to find a way to work closer to home and figure it out. I had no idea how exactly it was going to happen, but I definitely had that belief and was putting that out there that I needed to get a job closer to home. And sure enough, a former colleague of mine said, "Hey, uh, this is kind of how I met you.
Oh, wow. That's
I,
awesome.
yeah, no, there's this place. They are looking for people. I think you'd be great." I'm like, where would I work? And they're like, "Oh, you know, really close to my home." And uh, that's how I ended up at Nursing Dirty.
That's awesome.
But I had no idea that that even existed. You know, I couldn't have thought of any details because it wasn't a concept in my mind. But what was in my mind was that I need to find a way to work closer to home and be closer to my kids. And sure enough, the universe answered the call. That was very eye-opening to me that, okay, you can start to impact what you're bringing into your life. Um, but Mike Dooley, he's kind of lived it too, right? He's an interesting guy.
Yeah.
He is the
Yeah.
creator of Notes from the Universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was the name of the class you took?
What was that?
What was the name of the
I
class you took?
think again, this has been probably like 15 years since I since I really paid attention to it, but I think it was called Thoughts Are Things,
It's interesting that you brought him up today because we did not talk about him prior to this.
right?
Um, he was good friends with Louise Hay, who, before we came on this call, I grabbed her book because I want to read some of her book.
Oh, great.
You
Yes.
Can Heal
Great
Your
book.
Life. I think she might have published his books or something, but they were connected, and she's a tremendous healer as well. She's since passed, but very fascinating. So,
Yeah.
thoughts are things. What you believe about yourself and other people, you do create your reality with that. I think we've touched on it before. Like, you don't see the other person; you see a projection of what you want to see.
Yeah, sometimes I think that's true, maybe all the time.
Maybe more true than we'd like to admit.
Well, I think it's my guides have said it's more complicated than just this, right? We are here as spiritual beings learning a whole bunch of things. And the idea of manifestation on this level is just one piece of it. There are other things that come into play, like there are destinies involved, there are things in contracts that we've signed up for, there's karma involved. So, I don't know, let's say you, I don't know, had some sort of financial issue in a past life, just because we were talking about finances earlier, and maybe you have karma around it. You can do all the manifesting you want to try to bring in that money, but until the karma's cleared, it's not gonna happen, at least not the way you want it to, and it's gonna feel a bit like an uphill battle, until that's cleared or worked through. So, yeah, there's always that too. There's different, I guess, rules and laws of the universe that interplay together. I don't think it's just you can only say thoughts or things and everything I'm thinking about is what's gonna come to be, because it does seem to be that there's more to the story.
Okay, so how do we clear? You know what I mean? Like, for people listening and me included, right? Like if I have some karma to clear, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah, and sometimes we can clear things very quickly and easily. And what I have found is, and I'll say how I tend to do it in a minute, but some things you can just be aware of and ask for forgiveness for from the universe and to whomever you need forgiveness from whatever lifetime or parallel experience, whatever it is, right? Or even ancestrally. Um, Sometimes we do need to go through. I'm just going to say it doesn't have to be painful, but we usually experience it as pain, the pain of that process, for it to be totally cleared. So sometimes it does need to be an experience we need to have. Um, but generally, what happens when I am aware of karma, especially for myself, or anything that I need to clear, anything that might be standing in the way of what I'm trying to manifest, it can be quite a process sometimes, because we do sign up for certain experiences. Um, and so, what I do is I go into the courts of heaven, and it's more of a Christian based kind of healing. Some people might call it more like a karma court. But you go in and you ask to be shown, um, whatever you can be shown around a topic. So I'll go into the court of heaven and I'll say, all right, my name is Jennifer Palmer. I'm coming on, this one issue I'm having. I'd like to know if there's anything that I need to clear up. And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. And so then I'll go through the process of cleaning it up. And sometimes I've found, like with clients, they might have to do certain things. Like one client in particular had to fast for 3 days. So I think it was, one way to burn through the karma. It couldn't just be forgiven. So there was something that had to be done. But, forgiveness is a huge part of releasing karma. So forgiving yourself, forgiving others who've harmed you, and asking for forgiveness from those you've harmed, in whatever way they were harmed. And sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes we do things and we don't intend to, but it does create a bit of a karmic spin on things. So it's important to clear those energies. Um,
I was gonna say, what's the secular approach for those listening that are not perhaps spiritual or not
well, I think
Christian?
if they're listening to us, they probably are spiritual. No, but I mean, the secular approach, I guess, would be more, I would journal about the things that I did or that were done to me and work through the process of forgiveness. And, anytime you're holding anything other than love in your heart around something, which we all experience, anytime you're doing that, you're not in that space of love. And I really do think that when you're trying to manifest, the closer you can get to that full on state of love and just with no resistance to what's showing up, the easier it is to shift out of that negative space. So,
Yeah, I know we've mentioned the Ho'oponopono. I'm
right,
sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love
right,
you.
right.
I cannot sell that enough. Like it is such a powerful thing, and people resist it so much. I'm not
Yeah,
forgiving that person.
I know, I know.
They
Well,
deserve.
and they might on that level of things, right? When you're talking about the egoic experience, we all get hurt by people. People do awful things sometimes to other people, and none of us are beyond that. And if we haven't done it in this lifetime, we've done it in a past lifetime. So we've all done terrible things. And it's important to remember so that we can have compassion for people who've done terrible things to us.
That's hard for people. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but that's the work that we're here to do.
Um, One of the things that a few years ago, and your son Jacob really helped me with this, but the meditation of the violet flame and the intention to forgive everyone that has ever hurt me,
Yeah.
and to ask forgiveness. for all the people that I've hurt, whether it was knowingly or unknowingly. And just the feeling, even as I'm saying that, like, a feeling of lightness comes over me, like, that's a powerful thing to do, um,
Yeah.
valuable, and it took me a long ass time to get there.
I just had a vision of it's like when you're angry and you have not forgiven, you are chained to that person and you're both in prison. And the idea of forgiveness, it's not about saying, "Ah, what you did is fine. It's all good." It's really about, "I release you, and I'm gonna let the universe do whatever it needs to do to help you on your journey and your path. And I'm going to do what I need to do. And with the universe's help, I'm going to do what I need to do on my journey and my path. I'm going to stay in my lane. I forgive the situation. I let it go. And forgiveness is just a true, deep letting go. And if you're not feeling peace, like complete peace, when you think of a situation, you have not forgiven, not completely.
I'm laughing because I know how hard it is to forgive somebody. But you're right, and I think one of the words you said was, maybe a better way of looking at it, but it is to release your, attachment to that person.
And the situation.
Mhm.
And the need for vindication.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm right, you're
Like, you
wrong.
just gotta trust that it's all gonna work out the way it needs to, and that we're all getting the lessons we need, and you release them, and you release yourself from it too. And, it's when you're in ego trying to forgive, you can't forgive. You just can't, right? And that's usually where most of us try to achieve that. That's the space we're usually in trying to achieve it. We're in ego, we're hurt, we're wounded, and we're trying to forgive, or we're in shame and we want forgiveness. But either way, that's ego. And if you can get into that higher space, who you truly are, and see it for what it is instead of being in the depths of the despair of it all, just see it for what it is, the lessons and the things that we're here to learn, and use what happened in a way to help you in some way so that you can, use it as fuel to move forward in a positive way instead of being trapped and imprisoned by it.
The question that I ask myself is, how can I heal? What do I need to do to heal? And forgiveness was one of those things that sounded so obvious, but then it was like, how do you actually do that? And then setting an intention to forgive. And, um, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this too, but it took a while of being very intentional about it to actually get there.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I would be reminded that I'm not there yet. Thought I was there, not there. Thought I was there again, not there.
But you know what, Jim? I think that's true for the whole spiritual journey. It's like we like to think that we're going to get there in
There
this
is no
journey,
there.
right? There's no there. It's just this walking through. There's this ceaseless path of just exploration of who we are. And as we're walking the path, we get wiser. And then we can handle different things, or we can handle more difficult things or something. But as we're moving through, we're meant to be challenged. And that's why I'm saying it's more than just thoughts or things. To grow as a soul, we do need challenges. You can't just always get everything you want and not be challenged and expect yourself to grow. So there is an aspect of that. But I think thoughts are things is really important to understand, because as you're moving through any challenge that's brought to you as a part of your ascension or as a part of your initiation in your ascension process, those tests, all those things that it's a part of life as a soul on planet Earth. Your thoughts are going to determine how quickly and easily you get through that. So just having great thoughts and being positive doesn't mean things aren't going to happen. It's just, are you able to utilize it in a way that can really thrust you further down your path and in your journey, or are you going to use it in a way to be stuck?
Was listening to Ruben Langdon's podcast, inter what is it? Interview with Extra Dimensionals, ED,
Mm-hmm.
and um, one of the channelers that he had on was taking questions from this group. And the way he does his podcast is very interesting. So the audience can ask questions to the person channeling. And the entity that was coming through was named Abram. And Abram was taking questions from you know, this guy who was like, listen, I have done all of the work. And he was saying it confidently. Like, I quit my job. I didn't like it. I have been doing psychospiritual work. I have doing everything that I've been told or learned how to do to manifest the life that I want to live. And yet it's not happening. And so now I'm questioning my beliefs. Like, what am I doing wrong? Or
Mm-hmm.
am I and so it was very fascinating because it was like, okay, where's this gonna go? You know? And so there's this back and forth, this interchange. And what eventually they get to was that underneath it all, despite all of this work that this person was doing, there was this maybe unconscious, subconscious belief that, I'm a victim. They were
Mm-hmm.
still in a victim mindset. And
Yeah.
it's so hard to like see yourself in that light or to know that that's what you're doing. I know because this has happened to me when I realized that I've been putting myself in a victim mindset and then
Yep. Yeah.
get totally frustrated with myself. I'm like, oh, doing it again.
Again, I think that's another one of those things that most of us do. It's an archetype that we come in with, that we are meant to. It's kind of like it's it was a purposeful putting on the brakes in our life's experience so that we aren't just like, okay, I'm going to manifest XYZ. And then it boop, 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 it all shows up, you know? So it's like the brakes that are put on this victim idea, this victim mentality, because we're meant to basically overcome it or rise above it or ascend beyond it, into, that we're the heroes of our own lives. It's that hero's journey, basically. But we usually overcome that victim mindset by becoming the victim either many, many, many times or in some really very difficult ways, depending on what our soul's journey is needing. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's not always about, like, what's showing up is not necessarily about your thoughts all the time. Sometimes it's just a part of the experience we're signing up for. But how you navigate through it is what matters. And, we've talked about the hero's journey, and boy, it gets dark on that hero's journey sometimes. And if you don't have the right mindset to make it through, you're probably not. It's not going to go very well, or it's going to take an extraordinary amount of time, or, you're going to get way more battered on that journey than you would have otherwise. So you tend to do better and you go more quickly through the challenges when you have the right mindset.
Well, speaking of a victim mindset that can plague
Mhm.
many people, including myself,
Yep, me too.
becoming aware of it, then you can work with it. For me, what I found helpful is kind of like disgust with myself that I'm being a victim, which is maybe not the nicest way or the most kind way to kind of view it, but it really pissed me off. And it's like, all right, if I'm not a victim, how am I going to empower myself to pull myself out of this, and not be a victim anymore. Like, it's setting that intention, like, that belief, that thought that I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not allowing myself to be in this state. That is very powerful.
Well, so if you think of the opposite of victim, it's maybe more like victor or like victory, which really is like you had a test and you made it. You did it, right? You overcame it, or you passed the test. You were victorious in that experience. So if you look at the victimizations as a challenge instead, and even the really hard victimizations, the ones where it can even be brutal, your soul is ready for that challenge of forgiveness, the challenge of strength, the challenge of love, that, all of that. You're ready on a very deep level for a really hard challenge. So then choice is back to thoughts or things. What are you now going to do about it? How are you going to use this? How are you going to change that and transform that very negative experience to something that can serve you? Because that's how you become victorious. And it's not through anger, it's not through hatred, it's not through fear, it's always through love, even if it's just love of self. I love myself enough to not hold on to this anymore. You don't necessarily have to love the other person, although I think ideally that's what we're aiming towards. We just love and have compassion even when someone does something really terrible.
I'll share this because I think it will be helpful for somebody out there. Uh, but after my divorce, I came across an article where someone had gone through a very painful separation and divorce, and they talked about having a divorce ceremony. Have you heard of this?
I think you've mentioned it before, but go ahead
Have
and
I
mention
brought
it again. Yeah. I think it's
it was
beautiful.
this guy spoke so lovingly, and I can't remember what magazine I read it in, uh, just about how, you know, acknowledging the shared time together, the relationship, the love, the ending of it, but in a way that was, forgiving. It wasn't, "I'm gonna hit you over the head with a baseball bat." It was like, "You know what? There were some good times in this. It didn't work out, and it's time to move on, but we can acknowledge that this was not all bad. There were some really good things, and, I really appreciate you," and essentially, like, a very loving thing, right? To forgive yourself and to forgive the other person if there were any kind of, like, transgressions or anything like that, but just, like, being intentional about, like, let's honor this and move on in a loving, happy way. And so, before that, I didn't really even know that that was an option, and when I bring
Yeah.
it up to people, um, they are often surprised, like, "Oh, I don't have to be angry and resentful towards this person and all this negative stuff. I don't have to be a victim." Um, and more often than not, they're not really a victim. But
I mean, there's that too. A lot we see everything through the lenses of our past experiences. So I think a lot of times we think we're being victimized when we aren't. But yeah.
yes, and it is actually part of the curriculum. Getting my PhD in metaphysical counseling, and it's one of the rituals that they talk about, like having training in, and it's just a really wonderful thing. But that's one way, just that I share. I mean, obviously, that's a personal story, but it was, you can empower yourself to not be a victim and to be the victor, if you will. So then you're not tethered to that anymore.
Right. Well, a few minutes ago, I was kind of getting a little bit of a download, and they wanted us to talk about the idea of a thought for a minute and to realize that it's a frequency you're tuning into. And when you tune into anything, you're electromagnetic. You are attracting these things to you. So you can imagine, let's go back to the financial thing for a minute, just because we've used that a couple times. If you're tuning your frequency to a thought of, I never have enough, or it's not enough, or I'm scared, I'm not going to make ends meet, whatever, right? You're tuning into that frequency. That is the experience that you're bringing to you, and that's what's going to expand and become more concrete into your life, because that's what you're tuning into. Just like a radio station, you're tuning into that frequency, and that's now what you're hearing and experiencing. So if you tune into a different channel, you'll get something else. And so I think they want us to really think about the frequencies, the radio stations we're tuning into, and how how can we expect to hear something different when we're tuned into this. So if you're tuned into something but you want something different, then you got to train yourself to change the dial to what it is that you do want. So if you can think about it in terms like that, it might make it a little bit easier, because I think you had mentioned something beforehand where someone, you were listening to I think a podcast, and somebody was channeling, and a woman said, "I have strep throat," and so go ahead and explain that real quickly. What happened with that?
Uh, he said very, abruptly to stop talking to her several times, and essentially say, you kinda do if you think you do. You're installing this belief system that you have this disease or this virus or this infection. So in a sense, you're this is gonna be controversial perhaps, but, like,
Okay.
manifesting that,
Yeah,
energetically,
yeah.
and you don't have to believe that.
So
You
what
can
I want
believe
to,
you're
yeah,
healthy.
what I want to say about that is that's really hard to do. And I've certainly struggled with this with different things in my life, where something you've tuned into that frequency and it showed up, even if you didn't realize you were tuning into the frequency, somehow this thing showed up in your life. And now it's like it's 3D. It's what's here. Like, okay, you've got strep throat. What are you gonna do? That's what's showing up. You got a test. It said strep throat. Okay. Do you deny reality? Okay, so this is what has shown up. How do you shift it to a different station, something, tune into something else to make it go away, or that it isn't a thing? And what that reminds me of, one time I was carrying my laundry out of the room, and it's like a big laundry basket and it's wire. And I ran into the door jamb and my shin rammed into the because I was walking still, and my shin rammed into the wire, and it really hurt bad. I mean, almost brought me down. It hurt so bad. And in my mind, I'm like, it must have been a download for my guides. I was like, well, a couple four little words came out first, and then then it was like, wait a minute, okay, all right. No, that didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And I just told my body, it didn't happen. Nothing happened. Everything's fine. It immediately stopped. And it wasn't that I was trying to deny that this thing existed or that this thing happened. It was more that I was trying to shift the timeline and say, yeah, no, it didn't happen. That was a different timeline. This didn't even happen. It's fine. I had no bruise. Pain stopped immediately. All was well. Like, it really was like as if it didn't happen, but it hurt so bad. Um, so I think it's kind of something like that. The magic of our thoughts, it's not linear and concrete. We can shift timelines and shift things. It doesn't have to be so linear.
Jen, we are traveling further into the woo, and I love it.
Wasn't that what we're about? One of the things, and I might have mentioned this before on this podcast, but one of the things that I learned from Raymond Grace, who is the internationally known, he's like a master healer with the pendulum. He worked with somebody, and he said this on podcasts before, so I don't think he would mind me repeating this, but he had said that he worked with somebody, and I can't remember her age. I think she might have been in her 30s or 40s, but she was having problems sleeping because she was in so much pain her whole life. She never really had sleep. And when he started doing the healing, he realized she was severely abused as a child. I mean, probably worse than you can imagine. And he did some healing going back in time and stopped it. And not only did she immediately start to sleep well, but I think within like a week or two, all of her scars went away. She had scars her whole life from the abuse.
Mhm.
So he went back in time and changed that. So it was almost like she was on a different timeline or a different experience, and the body healed. Um,
I
So
have heard similar stories
it's amazing.
with people resolving things and then, like, scars healing and things like that.
Yeah. So what I encourage people and what I'm really still playing with myself is that this is not linear.
No.
So we tend to think of life that way. And so we think, oh, well, this is where we're at. This is our situation. Okay. I think full acceptance of wherever you're at the moment is important. But I also think, so back to the strep throat example, if we have strep throat, that's one experience that, we landed on a possibility of experiences, but maybe we can shift timelines. Maybe we can, or if we're still too linear in our thinking, we can just negate it and say, okay, but my body knows what to do. It's done. Right. And so you can change your beliefs in different ways. And I think the further you get down the spiritual woo and understanding of how things work, I think the more ability we will have to change timelines and do different things and navigate through this crazy experience in ways that are just not linear.
Yeah, and also that when you start to see yourself and your body differently, that your body is intelligent, it has the ability to heal. The symptoms that you may be experiencing is your body resolving the conflict, is healing. It's not something to be upset about or try to
Yeah.
take medicine to not feel. Uh, that's hard. That's a big shift for a lot of people to kind of get away from, really what we've been programmed to believe, that you have to, go to get a strep test or, go to an allopathic doctor and that kind of thing, and that you could heal your life.
Now, I want to make it really clear that we're not saying don't go do what you need to do medically
Yeah.
because, I mean, yeah. And, you know, I think it's about mind mastery too. I think you have to be at a certain level to be able to do crazy things like that, where you've shifted a timeline and the scars go away, or you suddenly realize, oh, you really hurt yourself, but no, you didn't. So I think you have to be at the right mindset to make that happen. If you're not in the right mindset or far enough along in your understanding, it's not going to work real well, probably. So, I wouldn't want somebody who maybe has strep throat to not go get the care that they need because they're thinking they can just heal it with their thoughts. But at the same time, you get to a certain level, you can heal it with your thoughts. So it's something to aim for, or it's something to work towards, or it's something to maybe more understand. But I certainly wouldn't want someone to get really sick and, and think that, well, I
Yes.
was told
And
my thoughts could overcome it. Well, they can. It doesn't mean it always will.
thank you
But
for the legal
yeah,
disclaimer.
I
Yeah.
know. Well, just making it clear.
he there is but there's absolutely something to thoughts and your beliefs and healing.
Right.
Um, because one of the things that I was telling you about that entity in the same podcast is, you can heal. They're talking about crystals, and you talked about using a pendulum. It doesn't matter. He says you could use anything
Yeah.
if you believe it and there's an intention behind it. It could be anything. The modality is almost, it doesn't matter. Um, but then if like, you can accept that and believe in it, it will happen. The healing will take place, which is fascinating to think about. So, but if you believe that it's not possible, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you do
Yeah.
have to be open to certain things. But once you've seen it, like I've had clients had miraculous healings where they prayed to Mother Mary, and tumors that they were going to have operated on disappeared.
Yep.
And when they describe it, how it has been described to me is that I felt some kind of energy enter my body, and it left, and the tumor was gone. And I
Wow.
knew I had been healed. And it's utterly fascinating because that does happen. Like, we
Yeah.
can't deny
Yeah.
that that happens.
Yeah.
And then the instance that I'm
Mm.
referring to, like there was medical documentation of it all. So super interesting. Your thoughts, your beliefs, how that can all impact your life. Um,
Yeah, and it's really hard to change when things are really negative. If you're experiencing a lot of difficulty, trying to get out of that with positive thought just feels like insult to injury. you know? Um, we all have a process we have to go through, and there is a choosing that has to occur. It feels very delicious to dive into the anger and the negativity and then another thing, like that kind of a thing, and just to be on a roll with the negativity. Sometimes it feels very satisfying in the moment.
well, one way to think about it, and from working with subconscious beliefs that people might be interested in, is to you could do like your own self hypnosis. I have things on my YouTube channel, um, but that I am becoming healthier every day, and saying that to yourself. I'm every day, day by day, moment by moment, I'm becoming healthier every day. I'm grateful for my health. How you are, what you are saying to yourself is very important. Now, it could
Yeah.
be other things, but whatever your particular challenge is, whether it's addiction or something else, food, I don't know, anything. But
But, I think you have to believe it, at least to some degree. If you're saying something that you don't believe, then maybe it's time for hypnosis.
well, if you're saying it to yourself, yeah, you know, repeatedly, you know, in a way that the meditation is that,
It
that
will it will replace with your because I've not done your meditations. So there are hypnosis meditations where it replaces the negative beliefs.
yeah, you
Nice.
start to program your subconscious mind into having a healthier outlook on a particular challenge.
Beautiful.
For a lot of people, like I was telling you about fear and doubt,
Yeah.
my own training and my own work is, day by day, I'm becoming, fearless, or I am free from fear. I am immensely confident. I am extremely focused. I'm becoming extremely disciplined. You know,
Mm.
those types of things. You start depositing those positive thoughts in your bank, your mental bank. And, if you're doing it correctly, you're trying to do it at times like in the morning or in the evening before you go to bed, where your mind is in a certain state where you start to plant those new essentially thoughts
Right.
with the intention that they're going to blossom. And a lot of things that plague us are sort of simple truths, right? Like, I am enough. Like, to really believe that, a lot of people don't believe that
Mhm.
they are enough. They don't. And so it comes across. I was in a restaurant the other day, and this uh, waitress was apologizing incessantly to everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I
Aw.
wanted to be like, stop saying
Yeah.
sorry. You're just
Yeah.
doing your job. It's okay. You don't, but it was coming from a place of fear, and this is not someone I know or anything like that, but just like you start to see things as you work on yourself and other people,
Yeah.
but that you don't have to be afraid. You can say things to people, or you don't have to take their crap.
Well, and I think the value of what you're adding with it being more of a hypnosis state is that a lot of times people do affirmations and it just doesn't land. It's not landing because they've got too many subconscious beliefs that go in the opposite direction of what you're trying to plant in. Um, so hypnosis is perfect for that.
You still have to be open to it. Uh, because a lot
Mhm.
of times, I think I brought it up the last time, people think they want to get better, but they really don't.
Yeah.
And the same goes for healing too, right? I mean, like, you could say you want to be healed, but you really don't.
Well, one of the things I work with my clients is, if you say you want to be healed, so you're coming to my office and you're saying you want this session, you want to be healed. I always look for the buts, but because there's always a reason, because it's always serving us in some way. So, whatever the challenge is, somehow it is serving us. And if we can figure out how, then we might be able to uncover those more hidden beliefs that we have or the thoughts that we're having. Because those background, those records are playing constantly in the background, and trying to pay attention and hear that thought, that was just playing because you're thinking of something else consciously, but this other thing is going on back here. They could be working in opposite directions. And then what you're trying to manifest isn't going to work. So
Yeah.
thoughts are things, but so are your subconscious thoughts. They're, sometimes even more important than the conscious ones.
Well, that's, you know, as we were talking about, it's not as simple. It's bringing awareness to the thoughts that are running your operating system,
Yeah.
you know. And how I explain it is that it's the code that it's driving the ship. And if you don't get at that code, that's what's going to keep steering it.
Yeah.
You'll
One
keep
of the one of the
repeating that
crazy
theme.
things that I realized, gosh, maybe a few years ago, it hit me out of the blue. I was like, you know what? I have a subconscious belief. If I was to get all the things that I'm trying to accomplish and just have it done, I probably wouldn't be alive anymore. So, what was bringing up resistance to my manifestation was this idea that I would die if I manifested everything.
Hmm.
Because then what's the point? Like, what are we here for? Which is another thought, another belief. And so I just thought that was really fascinating. Sometimes it's really deep. What would happen if you got all the things that you want, if you achieved everything and you felt totally fulfilled in life? What would be the downside? And there are downsides.
Well, what would be so you're saying there would be a downside if you got everything you wanted?
Well, what I was experiencing in that moment is, in human design terms, I'm a manifesting generator. So I like to create things. And if I got everything I ever wanted, everything I've ever tried to do, it all just worked out, I would feel really bored.
Hmm.
I'd have nothing to work towards. And that's a major thing that I strive for. Like I need to keep creating. It's just a natural part of who I am. And if I wasn't doing that, or if I felt like everything came so easily, the joy of creation would not be as fun either. So it's just kind of interesting. It there's downsides. And so then as you're working through whatever your thoughts and beliefs are around that, you know, does it really serve me to believe that? Probably not, but it's where I was. It's probably where I still partially am. And, and so trying to heal through that belief system of, I don't know, life needs to be a struggle sometimes. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't need to create more struggle though than it needs to be. So
It's funny. It's like this divine perspective, but it's a self-limiting belief when you are limitless.
yeah.
Create the next thing.
Yeah.
Um, we started talking about Mike Dooley. I did want to share uh, this. I don't know if you would call it an affirmation. Maybe it is. It's from Louise Hay in her book that I was mentioning earlier, How to Heal Your Life. But I find these words very beautiful, and I'll share them because I wanted to keep this positive. Uh, in the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. Each one of us, myself included, experiences the richness and fullness of life in ways that are meaningful to us. I now look at the past with love and choose to learn from my old experiences. There is no right or wrong, nor good or bad. The past is over and done. There is only the experience of the moment. I
Mm.
love myself for bringing myself through this past into this present moment. I share what and who I am, for I know we are all one in spirit. All is well in my world.
Beautiful.
Well, I think we all need to remind ourselves that there is beauty in this world and there's beauty in us sometimes.
Always. It's there.
I was just being playful. Well, Jen, any final thoughts on thoughts are things and being positive amidst the storm?
Yes, try not to judge yourself.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Be patient with your process as you are navigating through it because nobody's perfect. And even the best masters, the people who have mastered their minds, they're mastered their thoughts, they have moments where they're not at their highest game. We can't always be at our highest and best all the time. So give yourself a break. It's okay. Just recognize where you're at, what you might have done wrong or could have done better, and do it better next time. That's it. Just
Yeah.
keep plugging it.
Yeah, being non-judgmental is such a important way of being.
Yeah.
It is one of the most valuable lessons that I continue to work on because it's always a practice, but, um, it's funny, we were talking about staying positive. It's one of the steps in Bashar's, um, I don't know if what does he call this? Excitement formula or living your dreams,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
being in the moment, but acting on your excitement, your passion, whatever is most exciting to you in the moment, and do this every moment that you can. But one of the steps, step 4, is choose to remain in a positive state regardless of what happens, which is critical, I think. Uh,
Yeah. Well, because I think our natural tendency is to just operate on that old platform, that old operating system until we question it. And even when you learn how to question it, you're going to falter sometimes. You're just not going to remember because it's so ingrained. And, so just have patience.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll add this, I guess, but choosing to be positive and choosing to see the good in others, like you, that's a choice. Uh,
Yeah, it is.
I was talking to somebody, they were like, well, I can't be friends with that person. They have different political beliefs. And I'm like, come on, man. Be practice non-judgment. Like, who
Yeah.
cares? Like, how do you even know what they may or may not believe about anything or everything anyway, right? Like, you can either choose to be judgmental or choose to be non-judgmental. You get to pick. Some of my best friends, I'm sure if they knew what I believe, they'd be like, "Yeah, man, I don't know."
Yeah, I've had the same. It's
About
good.
variety of things. But, like, I would never allow that to color my perception. Well, now with what I've learned and how
Right,
to
right,
do
right.
that. It obviously was not an easy thing to do. Um, but it's worthwhile work, and to know that in any moment you choose how you show up. So, choose wisely
Uh,
and work on figuring out what you want.
yeah, what do you want?
So important.
Beautiful.
Well, hopefully this was helpful and positive in these times. Jen, you're feeling lighter, which is good. And, hopefully people start to, if we all started doing this, by the way, individually, the world will start to shift in a more positive direction. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Great point.
All right.
Well,
Well,
thank you,
till next
Jim.
time. Yeah. Be well.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. We are so grateful that you joined us. Check out the description to learn more about us and also for additional resources to help you on your journey.